Welcome to Open Studio on Brattleboro Community Television. My name is Chris Lenois, and today we are visiting with Cindy Jerome. She is the Executive Director of the Bradley House in Holton Home. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you, Chris.
And can't believe, first of all, it's the first time you and I are talking. We were just talking about that, but it's great to finally get a chance to talk to you about things that are happening at the Bradley House in Holton Home. There certainly has been a lot of news in the community about it, and it's really at a critical time for organizations like yours because of the aging population we have, well, here in the United States, but even more specifically here in our part of Windham County.
Yes.
In an email exchange back and forth you and I had getting ready for this interview, you actually referred to it as the phrase, the silver tsunami.
Yes.
I thought that was a great phrase, but does it really feel like a storm to you all in the eye of it?
It's the phrase that's used in the industry for the ramping up exponential growth in the age range of folks who we serve. So we don't feel like we're in the middle of it quite yet, but we do feel like we're at the beginning of it. And it's clear from the demographic information we have about Vermont, second oldest state in the country, and Windham County, one of the older counties in the state, that yes, it is coming and it's just going to get bigger and bigger. And more people will need our services. Now,
you said we're kind of at the start of it. I always think about one of the reasons that we're having this critical mass is because of the baby boom, right? When we talk about that time period in the 40s and the 50s when so many people were born. But we've been in the midst of that for a while, and maybe it'd be helpful to define the age population that you serve at Bradley House.
Yes, we serve people who are 65 and up, and more typically they're in their mid to late 70s, 80s, 90s, even 100s before they come to us. So the baby boomers aren't the bulk of those we serve, but they are coming. We are aging, aren't we?
Yes. Some of us faster than others, I guess.
That way,
But it definitely feels that way. When you think about that trend, and I'm certain it comes up in magazines, articles, professional development seminars, conferences, all these kinds of places. Are you seeing differences in challenges in our part of the country versus other parts of the country?
Differences and challenges in our part of the country. I don't see them as challenges as much as opportunities. You know, people around here tend to be really mindful and conscious about how they want to live their lives and what they want in their lives and don't want in their lives. And that syncs up really well with who Bradley House and Holton Home want to be. We're not big places where we make sure we're not too big for our staff to really get to know each resident and individualize the care that we give them. So no, I wouldn't say there are challenges, more opportunities.
Yeah, well, I guess resources certainly part of a challenge there. I know that you and I, one thing we want to talk about a little bit is about employees, professionals with the right licensure to do the work that you need to do. And then also, I assume that's one of the reasons Bradley House and Holton Home merged in the first place about 1.5 years ago, was because of a resource crunch.
Well, yes, that's true. Back in 2010, Holton Home, which had a long waiting list for quite a while, added a pretty large addition, about 5,000 square feet, which included 6 new resident rooms, because the waiting list, there were people out there who really needed to come. So we did that, and then we've noticed just in the last couple years, as unemployment has dropped quite a bit, and as the need for nurses and licensed nursing assistants has grown in the medical community at large, that it can be harder to find the right people to work with us. We don't get as many applications as we used to, for example. So we're excited when we see Vermont Technical College moving into town and becoming more visible and having more in terms of facilities to offer their students, because that's what we need, and the need's only going to grow. Yeah.
Can we go back about, well, I guess 1.5 years was the official merger of the two groups, but obviously it didn't just like December 30th, you decided, and December 31st it happened. It was something that was in conversation for a while.
Yes, it was. It was just about this time 2 years ago that the Bradley House Board and the Holton Home Board started talking about working together and whether Holton Home had some things to offer Bradley House and vice versa. So initially, the Bradley House Board signed a management contract with Holton Home, and I and our board treasurer did a lot of assessments, seeing what things might be made more efficient, making sure that the finances were where they needed to be, that sort of thing. And then at the end of the 6 months, which was December 31st, 2016, that's when we gathered and did the official merger. And the Bradley House Board dissolved, but several members from that board joined the Holton Home Board, which we felt was really important. They have different histories and do the same kind of work, have the same licensure. Level 3 residential care home is the official licensure title for both homes. But different histories, different personalities, different attributes, different things to offer. And so it's been great. It's been great to really get to know the people at Bradley House and settle in and see what we can do. And I'll launch right into the big revival project that we're doing now. One issue, one difference that was a challenge is that Holton Home has regularly since 2000, 2001 been doing big projects that are necessary to make sure that the home can well serve its residents, that the hallways are wide enough for two people with walkers to pass by one another, and everybody has their own private, full, accessible bathroom that works for them when they have walkers and they can't be climbing into a tub and shower unit. So we've been keeping up with those kinds of projects, and Bradley House didn't have the resources to do that for a number of years. And so they have piled up some, and those are all the things we're addressing in what we call the Bradley House Revival. Can I tell you more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Okay.
I know recently in the news there has been where you've gotten some money, I believe,
Yes.
from a grant that was approved by the town. I don't think it was from the town itself.
Well, there was a grant from the town.
There was a grant from the
And as
town.
I understand it, it was funds from the payback of loans that Brattleboro had made to area organizations, and they periodically will use money like that to support one project or another. And the good folks in the town office, they know what the demographics are here,
Right.
and they know what's coming, and they're interested in prevention and making sure we're serving our citizens well. So they wanted to make sure that Bradley House was still here. We need both homes. Holton Home and Bradley House are both needed by our community.
And they need to be up to code. I think one thing that we
Yes.
need to emphasize here is there are some changes that are outside of your control. You're talking about two homes that I don't know if they are considered historic, but they certainly are historic in
Yes.
this town, and they might even be of a vintage where they're considered historic. So there's a lot of different rules that you have to navigate. Meanwhile, the ADA codes are being
Yes.
upgraded. The technology around assisting people in a home like Bradley Home or Holton Home is changing as well. There's a lot of
That's
different things to
right.
keep track of.
Fire safety, there are a
Yeah.
lot of things that we need to be conscious of and we need to comply with, and that's what's going to be the result of the project we're doing there now.
And the desire to keep it in the structures that they're in.
Yes, they are. For any of your listeners who have not been to Holton Home or Bradley House, just stop by sometime and ask a staff member to point you to the oldest, most beautiful parts, and you'll be astonished. Let me tell this story, Chris. I
Please
don't know
do.
if you
Love
know the
stories.
origins of Holton Home. In 1892, a number of concerned citizens got together and felt that there should be a Brattleboro home for the aged and disabled.
Okay.
They were aware of some of their friends and neighbors who were aging and didn't have a good place to be. So they got together, and it happened that one of them was Henry Holton, who was a state senator, and I'm sure he had to do with the fact that Holton Home was incorporated by an act of the legislature. And there aren't too many organizations around anymore that can say that. So they bought the old Esterbrook farmhouse in 1896 on Western Avenue, right where we are now, and moved in there. We celebrate our 125th birthday this year on November 18th, which is very exciting. We have some plans for that. We'll let you know about soon.
Okay.
So within not too many years, they outgrew that farmhouse, and actually in 1903 picked up the farmhouse and moved it back and built that beautiful Greek Revival stone structure that you see right on the avenue and you associate with Holton Home. Mm-hmm. And that cost $10,000, as I recall, to build that whole building.
Which was a lot of money in those days, to be fair.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that's
but
significant.
It was beautiful inside, and it still is. Beautiful woodwork, fireplaces, nice high ceilings. Some of the first buildings, one of the first buildings in town to have central heating and plumbing and electricity. It was intended to be a fine place for our friends and neighbors who need a place to go as they age. And it's still gorgeous, and we're intent on keeping those truly historic parts of the home historic, but still safe for our residents.
Well, and that gets to something that I think and it's probably a broader issue than right here in Brattleboro, but maybe we value this more, but we value those aesthetics. We value the history. It'd be easy to just kind of put up a box, right, somewhere, a box structure that was ADA compliant and not pretty, but really efficient. Both of those things can be achieved. That's the goal of this Bradley House project.
Exactly, and I want to tell you Bradley House's history as well. It's even more fascinating in a way. So Richards Bradley was a successful businessman in Boston who had family connections up here. He wanted to marry Sarah Mary, and Sarah's family had a lot of money, and I think her dad wanted to make sure she wasn't marrying somebody who was too poor. So he said, a suitor may marry Sarah when he builds her a suitable home. And Bradley House was the home that Richards built for Sarah. We have giant portraits in the front hallway in their old age, looking pretty happy. So that worked out well. So they owned it until the 1940s or 50s, when some other names in town, Fred Harris of Harris Hill Ski Jump, he bought it and made some changes to the building and turned it into kind of a rooming house, boarding home. And then the Baptists, Vermont Baptist Association, bought it in 1964 and turned it into a retirement home for ministers and missionaries. And their mission expanded. They started taking anybody, and they changed the name to Hilltop House. And then in, I think it was around the year 2000 or so, they decided that they were ready to divest themselves of that. They'd been losing money for quite a few years. And that's when it came under an independent board, and it's no longer affiliated with any religious organization. But Richards built Sarah a gorgeous home with incredible details and 12-foot high ceilings, and it's just stunning. I'd love to show you around sometime. You should come by.
I would love to do that.
So all of that will be preserved, and we are building some new space. And on the third floor where the servants' quarters were, we're going to be pretty much gutting that so that we can insulate it really well and build spaces that work well for our residents and not servants.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about some of the granular details of that project. How much greater capacity are you going to end up with at the end of this project?
We'll be able to serve 8 more people than the 28 we're licensed to serve right now. We're doing the project in 2 phases. Phase 1 is an addition, a 2-story addition of about 9,000 square feet. It'll have a new dining room that can hold everybody, and a commercial kitchen. I got to give a shout out to Steve, our head chef, who does an incredible job in a very small old kitchen. Before I came here, we were looking at the plans for the new one, and it's exciting to think he'll have a reasonable place to work in. There will also be 15 resident rooms or suites in the new addition. Once it's done, which will be this coming November, everybody who lives or works in the mansion, which is the nickname for the whole 3-story structure, will move into that new addition so that the mansion can be renovated. New wiring, new plumbing, wider hallways. Bathrooms are shared right now. That won't be the case anymore. Other little things that mean a lot, especially to seniors, There are 19 rooms in the mansion that are on one thermostat that's in the living room. You can imagine some of our residents want their rooms to be 80 degrees,
Right.
and others want their rooms to be 66 degrees. And sometimes in the middle of the winter, somebody has to open a window to cool off their room, which is, you can imagine the dollars going out the windows. The original 1856 windows that are single pane and let a lot of air in. So we'll be doing a lot of greening up of the building, insulation, and making sure that we're not putting a lot of money in utilities. We're putting money into programs for residents and into wages and benefits for staff.
Yeah.
That's important to us too.
And I wanted to clarify too, because I think you said something in the midst there of the description of the rooms. There are some rooms for staff living there all the time, or no?
I didn't present that very
Okay,
well. The Bradleys had servants who lived on the third floor.
Right.
We don't have staff who
don't have
live
staff who
at the
live there.
building now.
Okay.
We just cover 3 shifts a day. And
Right.
there
So
are
when we're
always
talking about
staff.
that room capacity, it's all for the
All
occupants,
for
for
residents.
seniors.
We'll end up with 35 new units, but one of them is a really nice 2-room suite specifically for couples. It even has 2 sinks in the vanity, which
Hey.
is just important, I think.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
When you think about that capacity of rooms and increasing it, I'm sure you've done projections as far as the silver tsunami and what it would mean. I mean, does it get you close? I'm sure you could use more capacity if the space could take it, but does that get you close?
I think that it will serve us well for a long time, and more importantly, frankly, we don't want to get bigger than the 35 resident capacity at Holton Home and the 36 capacity that we're planning on for Bradley House, because any more than that, and it would be hard for us to achieve our standard of excellence in service. It really matters that the staff get to know the residents well. One example I use a lot is they learn somebody's tell, like in poker.
Yeah.
They know what somebody does when they're cold or when they're frustrated or when they're whatever, and they know what will help. They know which their favorite sweater is, and they'll run and get it and bring it back without even asking if they need it, because they know they do, because they know the residents so well. So we don't want to get bigger at either home.
Right, and like in education, it sounds like there's a certain staff to client, is it fair to call
Sure.
people clients, or occupant ratio that you find to be optimal? What is that, would you say?
Well, we have a staffing structure with 35 or 36 residents of 3 aides on during the days and evenings, and one is pretty consumed with managing medication. Most of our residents, even if they could manage medication by themselves, they appreciate the convenience of having somebody bring it to them and make sure they don't run out and all of that sort of thing. So that's what we do, but we also have all the extra folks. We've got housekeepers who are universal workers who pay just as close attention to the residents as the licensed nursing assistants and resident aides do. And we have activities people, and of course we have a nurse at each home, and we have a site director at each home. And we have volunteers who come in. There's a lot going on.
Yeah,
a lot of
well, and
activity
this
happening.
capital campaign is going to help them as much as it's going to help the residents.
That's
as far as
right.
you mentioned
That's
the kitchen.
right.
The kitchen alone, I'm sure
Yeah.
is going to be great for everybody.
Yes.
In terms of where we are, and obviously people are going to be watching this at different times, depending on when they see it. But kind of lay out the timeline where you are in the capital campaign right now, and what the direction is.
Sure. We're just finishing up the silent phase of the capital campaign. Maybe I'll break some news that we haven't talked
Ooh,
about
love it when
very
people
much
break
at all.
news.
The Thomas Thompson Trust, which you know has been so generous to organizations in Brattleboro, they have pledged a $50,000 challenge grant.
Yeah.
To the people who we're going to ask to give to the capital campaign. So every dollar people give, it will be doubled. So look for our mailing about it in the next month or two, and we'll have stuff in the paper too, I'm sure. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to mention it here.
Right.
There's so many good people in town who know the importance of having a home like this. A healthy town needs to take care of all of its citizens. We need early child care. We need good schools, we need support for people trying to figure out what they're going to do for their career, and for businesses, and we also need a good place where older folks can go for care if they can't live at home.
Yeah, yeah. When you're talking about the Silent Phase capital campaign, are you at the same time doing work trying to get some of these things in, or is it contingent upon achieving a certain funding level before you can start doing some of the work, some of the renovations that you need to do?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
The huge majority of this project is coming from federally funded grants and loans, low interest, long-term loans, that sort of thing. So yes, we have started. We broke ground officially on May 1st.
It's in progress.
Yes, it is. There's been a good bit of excavation. There are huge piles of dirt on our lawn, and we've started pouring foundation, the footings, and I think some walls were going in today of the basement. So yes, we are on our way.
I know it's always it's a little bit of a leap of faith, but I think, like you just said, for all the reasons you laid out, a pretty sure bet as far as the money you need to raise from the community, people valuing this and understanding the challenges in this community.
It's remarkable. The Vermont Housing and Conservation Board gave us a $500,000 grant. The Vermont Community Development Program gave us a $500,000 grant. Vermont Housing Finance Agency is doing our construction loan at a very low interest rate. The USDA Rural Development is doing our long-term financing. It's something like 2.75% interest. It's remarkable. And they're all very involved in making sure that everything is done very well. And we appreciate that. We like investing in the next 100 years, not just the next 20 or 30 years.
Well, and you had to be at least thinking about this project even prior to the merger between Bradley House and Holton Home. I mean, you don't just all of a sudden, again, come up with this idea overnight. How did that wrinkle change? Did it change the plans, or did it make you think about them in a different way?
It was clear from the very first time that we walked through Bradley House with an eye toward, can we work together, what can we do to help, that there were needs, there were capital needs, there needed to be some improvements. And the fire marshal and people who make sure that things are as they should be was making it clear that things really do need to be corrected, and they will.
You mentioned there were mailings probably going out to members of the community. Is there any place right now? Is there an online kind of website or anything where people can give right now that you want to share with the viewers?
Sure. People who are interested in finding out more about Holton Home or Bradley House, whether you know someone who you think might benefit from our services, or if you want to make a donation, just go to our websites, holtonhome.org or bradleyhousevt.org.
Now, you've been in the midst of this capital campaign and a lot of the infrastructure planning. Have you given thought to the next steps after that? I mean, the idea of being able to merge a couple of different organizations with the rich history, a lot of energy around it. Certainly, once you get those facilities up and going, do you plan on expanding programs? Do you plan, I mean, what do you think is the outcome, the evolution for you all as an organization?
We do. When Bradley House has more residents and things are all done and we're on track, we do want to expand the activities program there. We want to get a vehicle specifically for Bradley House. Holton Home has 2 vans and is loaning the wheelchair van to Bradley House right now, but there's so many wonderful things going on around here, and we want to have like an 8-passenger van so Bradley House folks can go out and enjoy those activities. And we're doing more things together as well, which is exciting. And there are efficiencies in that. We don't need to write the same policy for both homes. One of the site directors, or all of us together, can write one together, and it applies to both homes, and that makes sense.
Right.
And there's so much that we can share and we can benefit from by being merged. So it's been good.
Well, and what you talk about, especially with the transportation, when I think about the population that you're serving, I mean, 65 is a different age now than it was when my grandmother was 65 in terms of quality of life that somebody has. So I imagine the priorities are more activities and providing more opportunities to sort of be part of the community.
Absolutely, absolutely. It enhances health and maintains optimal cognitive functioning by doing those things, offering those kinds of things. And I should mention that Bradley House being so close to downtown it works so well for many of our residents who can still walk downtown and visit the library or go to their bank, and they don't need a car to do so. This is kind of a baby boom thing again. We redefined how you give birth, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And we're redefining how you age. And a lot of folks are thinking, I can still manage at home, but I'm putting way too much of my energy into shopping and cooking and house repair and shoveling snow. I would rather somebody else do all that and let me put my energy into the volunteer job that really means a lot to me, or going through all those papers in boxes that I've been meaning to go through for years. And so they'll come to Holton Home or Bradley House so that they can do that, even though they may be able to stay home if they wanted to.
Something else I was thinking about getting ready for this interview, that I wonder how unique it is to this area with regards to, you have obviously your conventional Western medicine, but you also here have a holistic group of people who provide a number of different services, whether that's something like acupuncture or something even just like massage therapy, things like that. And I've had conversations with the medical professionals, the MDs and the DOs, and they certainly see a synthesis there. And I imagine that that's a unique opportunity in this community, just the plethora of resources that you have.
When I was getting in my car to come here, I waved goodbye to the Reiki lady who comes to Bradley House regularly.
Happening,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And the nurses and the aides understand that those kind of options are important to many of our residents. And they may not even know about all of the options. And so our nurse will let them know about what options might be available that would be useful to them. So yes, we embrace anything and everything that will help people age well.
That's part of it, what you basically consider your programming.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
When you think about the staff there and the training, and certainly you mentioned Vermont Tech earlier, and it's great that they invested in this campus specifically for nursing in Brattleboro. And being in the border area of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, some of those challenges of recruiting, retaining employees, I know that for Vermont, it's in a number of industries a challenge. I imagine it's the same for you.
Yes, we were talking earlier about how unemployment really is pretty low in Vermont, and it almost seems as though in healthcare, it's in negative numbers, if that makes sense. There are more openings, it seems sometimes, than there are qualified people to fill them. And so that can be a challenge. We have really high standards for who works with us, and we have a great staff at both homes. They're remarkable people, big hearts, hard workers, really caring people who go the extra mile routinely all day long. They don't just do what's required and then sit down. They really make sure that lives can be as good as possible. So it can be hard to find people like that, and we've been remarkably successful. I'm going to steer the conversation somewhere else a little bit about another challenge that we had talked about. It's important to us to treat our staff well, to pay them a living wage, to make sure they have the benefits that they should have. When we merged with Bradley House, we brought health insurance back to the staff there. They had lost that, and that just did not seem right. So we brought that back. There's a retirement plan at both homes. We work hard to pay a good wage. We can't always do exactly a livable wage, but that is always our goal. So doing that and making sure that we have safe, pleasant buildings and that we're giving all the programming that our residents want and that really makes a difference for them. It can be hard to do financially. We have a number of residents who are there on a Medicaid program, which is great. It doesn't quite cover our costs, as you can imagine, so we do fundraising.
Right.
We don't discharge people when they run out of assets. We keep them. That's part of our mission as a nonprofit that cares about our community. So that's another way we meet the challenge.
Yeah, well, Cindy, Jerome, I think you've given the viewers out there a lot to learn about with regards to your mission and your organization and why they should support it. Really appreciate your time today. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chris. I appreciate it, and we all do.
And thank you for watching this edition of Open Studio on Brattleboro Community Television. I want to remind you that the BCTV website is brattleboro.tv.org, where you can watch this and other episodes.